Wake up, you say you want it. But do you? Because if you really wanted it, you wouldn't stop after the first no. You wouldn't quit after the first failure. You wouldn't cry about how hard it is. You'd get up and go again, again, until you get what you came for. You don't get greatness from comfort. You don't get success from trying once. You earn it with blood, with sweat, with that never back down grind. I don't care how many times you've failed. You go again. I don't care who counted you out. You go again. And every time you rise, every time you fight, every time you push. Yoggin, this ain't for the weak. This ain't for the lazy. This is for the one who's ready to go tour for their dream. Failure ain't final. It's fuel. You hear me? Failure is not the period at the end of your story. It's the comma. It's the pause, the breath, the redirect. It's the setup for something greater if, and only if, you're willing to respond the right way. Most people treat failure like death, like it's over, like the dream just died right there. But I'm here to tell you, failure is the beginning. It's where the real journey starts. It's where the weak fall off and the warriors rise up. See, the problem isn't that you failed. The problem is what you told yourself after you failed. You said, maybe this isn't for me. You said, maybe I'm not good enough. You said, it's too hard. And that right there, that mindset, is what's keeping you down. It's not the failure. It's the meaning you gave it. But the greats, the ones who make history, the ones who break barriers, they don't run from failure. They don't fear it. They USC it. They feed on it because failure has a lesson in it that success can never teach you. When you win, you celebrate. When you fail, you evaluate. When you fail, you're forced to look at the cracks in your foundation. You're forced to ask yourself, am I built for this? And that's when you start building the version of you that is built for this. You dig deeper, you go harder, you grow stronger. Not in spite of failure, but because of it. You think champions wake up every day and win with a smile. You think they just walk into greatness. Nah, they get knocked down. They fall short, they get embarrassed, but they take those hits and they convert them into energy, into strategy, into fuel. You get beat. Cool. Now you know what it feels like. Now you know where the holes are. Now you come back smarter, sharper, hungrier, but only if you decide that failure is not the end. It's the ignition. You gotta stop fearing failure and start chasing it. I know that sounds crazy to some of you, but listen, the people who win the most, fail the most. Why? Because they try the most. They show up when they're tired. They give it their all when nobody's clapping. They fall on their face, and they get up anyway. You sitting here waiting for the perfect moment, waiting until you're ready. That's fear disguised as planning. That's procrastination pretending to be patience. You gotta move. You gotta act. You gotta risk getting it wrong. Because in that risk, in that chaos, is where the power lives. When you fail, something inside of you breaks open. That's where your grit shows up. That's where your hunger starts to roar. But if you run every time something doesn't go your way, you'll never tap into it. You'll never unlock it. You'll stay average. You'll stay safe. You'll stay small. But if you look that failure in the face and say, you just made me better, now you're dangerous. Now you're unstoppable. Now you're built for the fight. Too many of you are waiting for life to go easy. Let me tell you right now, it won't. Life don't owe you a smooth ride. Dreams don't hand themselves over. You want it? You better be ready to take some hits. You better be ready to fall. But more than anything, you better be ready to rise. And rise again, because every time you do, you level up. You get stronger, you get wiser, you become something more than you were before. Failure is a mirror. It shows you who you really are. When the lights are off, when the crowd is gone, when the hype fades, who are you then? Are you someone who crumbles, or are you someone who decides? This isn't where it ends. This is where it begins, because that's what it's about. Not about being perfect, not about getting it right every time. It's about pushing forward, even when it's ugly, even when it hurts, even when you're scared. That's the mindset. That's the difference. That's the fire that turns failure into fuel. Discipline beats motivation every single time. You can't rely on motivation because motivation is a feeling, and feelings lie, feelings change. One day you wake up ready to take on the world, and the next day, you don't even feel like getting out of bed. That's just how it is. That's human. But if you're only moving when you feel like it, you're never going to be consistent. And if you're not consistent, you will never win. Motivation might get you started, but discipline is what keeps you going when everything else in you is screaming to quit. People think the secret to success is staying hyped, staying inspired, staying pumped. That's a lie. The real ones, the ones who make it to the top, they don't rely on hype. They don't wait for the spark. They create the fire. They don't need someone shouting at them to move. They move because it's who they are. Discipline becomes their identity. Discipline becomes their DNA. You can't stop them because they're not depending on a mood. They're driven by commitment. Let me ask you, what happens when the lights are off? The music stops and no one's watching. What happens when there's no applause, no pat on the back, no external push? That's where discipline steps in. That's where it counts. Motivation might show up on Monday, but discipline shows up every day. Rain, shine, pain, or peace. Discipline keeps showing up. It doesn't care if you're tired. It doesn't care if you're in the mood. It shows up because the mission matters more than the moment. You gotta understand, discipline is the muscle that most people never train. They wait until it's too late. They say things like, I don't feel it today, or I'm just not inspired right now. That's weakness talking. That's the voice of a quitter disguised in self-care language. Sometimes, you need to tell yourself, I don't care how I feel. I've got work to do. That's what separates the average from the elite. That's what separates dreamers from doors. You want that body. You want that business. You want that life you keep talking about. Then you need discipline more than you need hype. You need structure more than you need speeches. You don't need another motivational video. You need to decide that no matter what happens, you're showing up. Not just when it's fun. Not just when it's easy, but every single day. Through the grind, through the boring, through the uncomfortable. That's discipline. Discipline is the quiet grind. It's the unsexy stuff. It's waking up early when no one else is. It's saying no when everything in you wants to say yes. It's doing what you have to do, not just what you want to do. And let me tell you something. Discipline compounds. It builds momentum. It strengthens your will. Every time you choose discipline over comfort, you build a new layer of grit. You sharpen your focus. You harden your edge. See, motivation is for the moments when the fire is already lit. But what happens when the fire dies out? You need something deeper, something stronger, something rooted in who you are, not how you feel. That's why you train discipline like a weapon. You wake up and you do the work whether you like it or not. That's power. That's freedom. That's how you control your destiny, instead of waiting on your emotions to carry you. Think Kobe waited to be in the mood to practice. You think Serena only trained when she was feeling good. No. Champions don't wait. They decide. They show up broken. They show up tired. They show up when everyone else is taking a break, because the goal doesn't care how you feel. The dream doesn't care if you're motivated today. The dream only responds to action. And consistent action comes from discipline. You keep saying you want success. Prove it. Not with your words, with your routine, with your habits, with your calendar, with your work ethic. Discipline is not loud. It's not flashy. But it's the most dangerous force on the planet when applied daily. It's the voice in your head that says, "Let's go," when everything else says stop. It's the force that keeps you aligned with your purpose even when the path gets dark. It's what turns amateurs into legends. Repetition builds resilience. Go again. Most people run from repetition because they think it's boring. They want new. They want excitement. They want instant results. But greatness is built in the repetition. It's in the grind, the routine, the day in and day out process of doing it over and over and over again. Even when it's hard, even when it hurts, even when no one's watching, that's where the real strength is forged. That's where your resilience is born. Of everybody wants to win, but not everybody wants to repeat the process. They want the trophy, but they don't want the training. They want the outcome without the repetition that creates it. But repetition is the key. It's the secret sauce. You do something once and you might get lucky. You do it twice and you're learning. You do it 100 times and now it's who you are. That's when it gets dangerous, when it becomes automatic, when the grind becomes your default. Repetition trains your mind. It builds discipline. It hardens your mentality. You stop thinking and you start executing. And the more you repeat, the less fear you feel. The more you do, the stronger you get. Because repetition creates rhythm, and rhythm creates confidence. That's why the best in the world don't just practice. They master the repetition. They do the same shot, the same move, the same drill, 1,000 times until it's second nature. Not because they're bored, but because they're obsessed with being eliteo. Don't build resilience by avoiding the hard stuff. You build it by facing it again and again. You fall, get up, you fail, try again. You're tired, go again anyway. That's what shapes you. That's what teaches you to push past limits. Because every time you go again, you prove to yourself that you're stronger than your excuses. You prove that pain is temporary, but progress is forever. And with each repetition, you strip away the weakness. You shed the doubt. You sharpen the weapon. Resilience is not a gift. It's a result. It's what happens when you keep coming back. It's what happens when you choose to rise instead of retreat. And the only way to build that kind of power is through repetition. You can't read about resilience. You can't watch a video and suddenly have it. You've got to live it. You've got to earn it. You've got to repeat the work until the pain turns into pride. Most people quit before they ever get to that place. They try once, twice, maybe 3 times, and then they fold. They say, "It's not working," when what they really mean is, it's not happening fast enough. But results don't follow speed. They follow commitment. They follow consistency. They follow repetition. That's why champions are different. They don't stop at 3 tries. They go 1,000, 10,000. until the wall breaks, until the door opens, until the game bends to their will. There's no shortcut. There's no hack. You want mental toughness. Repetition. You want endurance. Repetition. You want confidence, clarity, power. It's all built in the reps. And it's not just about the reps you do when you're fresh. It's about the reps you do when you're exhausted, when you're doubting, when you're hurting. That's when you build something deeper than motivation. That's when you build resilience. Some days, it's not going to feel like it's working. Some days, the progress will feel invisible. But just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not there. The repetition is carving something inside you. It's building a version of you that doesn't quit, that doesn't flinch, that doesn't back down when it gets tough. You go again, not because it's easy, but because you said you would. You go again because the future version of you is depending on it. Repetition teaches you how to suffer well. It teaches you how to stay calm in chaos, how to keep your mind sharp when your body is screaming. You don't panic under pressure because you've been there before. You've trained there, you've lived in the reps, and that's what resilience is, not the absence of pain, but the ability to keep moving through it, to adapt, to overcome, to repeat the process with unwavering intent. This is what separates the great from the average. The greats embrace repetition because they know it's the only way to become unbreakable. They don't care about how they feel. They care about who they're becoming. Every rep is a step toward mastery. Every repeat is a message to the world. I'm not going away. I'm not backing off. I'm coming again. Comfort is the enemy of growth. It's the silent killer, the invisible chain that keeps people stuck in the same place year after year, wondering why nothing changes. Comfort feels good in the moment, but it robs you of progress. It lures you in with ease and familiarity, and before you know it, you're stagnant. You're surviving instead of thriving. You're safe, but you're stuck. You've built a routine that protects your ego but paralyzes your potential. Growth doesn't happen in soft spaces. It happens when you're under pressure, when you're stretched, when you're facing things that make you uncomfortable. That's where you find out what you're really made of. That's where your limits are tested and broken. But most people don't want that. They want growth without pain, change without challenge, success without sacrifice. That doesn't exist. If you're serious about evolving, you have to be willing to step out of comfort and into the unknown. Truth is, comfort makes you weak. It makes you soft. It gives you just enough to keep you from chasing more. It's the warm bed that whispers, you can skip today. It's the voice that says, you've done enough, when deep down, you know you haven't even scratched the surface. Comfort convinces you that you're okay where you are, even when your soul is screaming for more. That's the trap. And if you're not careful, you'll live your whole life inside that trap. You think champions train in comfort. You think warriors become legends by staying where it's easy. No, they put themselves through hell on purpose. They seek out discomfort because they know that's where the power is. They do the things others won't do. They go to the places others fear. And that's why they achieve what others never will. Every breakthrough you want lives on the other side of discomfort. That pain you're avoiding, that's the gatekeeper. That's the price of admission. Most people think fear is the enemy. But the real threat is comfort. Because fear can drive you. Fear can motivate you. But comfort numbs you. It tells you, it's fine, just stay here. Don't push. Don't risk. Don't dream too big. And if you listen to that voice long enough, it becomes your identity. You start playing small. You start settling. You stop growing because you stop chasing the hard things. Growth requires tension. You have to stretch beyond what you know. You have to wake up earlier than you want to. You have to take risks that scare you. You have to face rejection, failure, uncertainty, not once, but over and over again. That's the process. That's how growth works. It's not glamorous. It's not easy, but it's necessary. The sooner you accept that, the faster you'll evolve. When you feel uncomfortable, that's your signal that you're stepping into new territory. That's your sign that you're doing something most people won't. And the more you expose yourself to discomfort, the stronger you get. You build resilience. You build grit. You build emotional control. You stop flinching at hard things. You stop avoiding pressure. You stop making excuses. Because discomfort becomes your training ground, not your enemy. Everything you want, the body, the mindset, the life, the freedom, it's on the other side of the things you're avoiding. That early morning alarm, that hard conversation, that next rep, that extra hour of work, that leap of faith. But if you keep choosing comfort, you'll never know what you could have become. You'll live with regret instead of results. You'll wonder what if instead of saying I did. You have to train yourself to move toward discomfort, to do the hard thing even when everything in you wants to run. Because every time you do, you become more. You develop character, discipline, confidence. You build momentum. You prove to yourself that you can do what most people avoid. That's where the separation begins. Not in talent, not in luck, but in the willingness to get uncomfortable on purpose. This isn't about pain for the sake of pain. This is about purpose, about progress, about choosing growth over comfort every single day, because comfort might feel good now, but growth is what will feel good forever. Growth will make you dangerous. Growth will make you unstoppable. But only if you're willing to step out of what's easy and step into what's necessary. That decision, that daily decision, is what defines the winners. No quit, no excuse, just results. That's the mindset of a finisher. That's the mentality of someone who doesn't stop when it gets hard, doesn't fold when it gets uncomfortable, doesn't cry about what's missing. Too many people talk like they want it but act like they don't. They have big dreams, but small habits. Big words, but weak actions. They start strong, but crumble at the first sign of adversity. Why? Because deep down, they left room for quitting. They left the door open for excuses, and that's the difference. Real ones burn the exit plane when you adopt the mindset of no quit, no excuse, just results. You stop entertaining the option of failure. You stop justifying your lack of effort. You stop blaming your past, your circumstances, or other people. You take full responsibility. Whether it rains or shines, whether they support you or not, whether you feel like it or not, you show up, because your standard isn't based on emotion, it's based on execution. You don't need motivation to do what needs to be done. You don't wait for perfect conditions. You create progress in any condition. Excesses are comfortable. They give you a story that makes quitting feel okay. I didn't have time. I didn't have the right support. I'm not like them. All of it is noise. All of it is weakness dressed up in logic. And every time you make an excuse, you buy yourself more failure. You build a habit of explaining instead of executing. But if you cut the excuses and commit to the work, the results will follow. Not because it's easy, but because it's inevitable. When effort meets consistency, you want to separate yourself. Show up when others sleep. Push harder when others pull back. Keep going when others tap out. That's how you become dangerous. That's how you rise above the noise. Everybody says they want it until it requires real sacrifice, until it requires pain, until it demands discipline. But the ones who lock in, who decide that quitting is not on the table, those are the ones who break barriers. Those are the ones who make noise in silence and shake the room with their results. Quitting is a habit, just like winning is. The more you quit, the easier it gets. The more you give up, the more natural it feels to fold when pressure hits. But the more you fight, the more you endure, the more you choose to grind through the pain, the more that resilience becomes who you are. You start becoming that person who doesn't flinch, doesn't back down, doesn't need sympathy. You become a threat because you're not relying on luck, or hype, or external validation. You're relying on your will, your hunger, your fire. Some of you are looking for shortcuts. You want the results, but you're still negotiating with the work. You say you're committed, but only when it's convenient. That's not how winners operate. Winners don't need perfect conditions. They adapt, they adjust, they perform. They don't need a crowd to cheer them on. They work like someone's life depends on it, because sometimes it does. Sometimes your future, your family, your legacy is depending on you showing up regardless of how you feel. This game is mental. It's spiritual. It's war. And if you're not locked in, if you're not grounded in a mindset of no quit, no excuse, just results, you will break when pressure comes. You will collapse when it gets uncomfortable. But if you've trained your mind to expect hard, to embrace hard, to conquer hard, then nothing can stop you. You become bulletproof. You become inevitable. Because no matter what happens, your response is always the same. Keep going. You don't get to cry and quit. You don't get to whine and win. At some point, you have to draw the line and say, I'm done making excuses. I'm done starting over. I'm done blaming life. You either do the work or you don't. You either show up or you sit down. You either grind or you fold. That's it. No in between. No gray area. Winners don't live in the middle. They commit. They go all in. And they finish what they start. You want to live a life people respect. Deliver results. You want to change your story. Stack results. You want to silence the doubt, the hate, the fear. Bury it under results. Every single day, you've got a choice. Quit or keep going. Make excuses or make progress. Be average or be elite. And when you finally stop negotiating with the grind and start respecting the process, that's when the game changes. That's when you rise.